Hey, and welcome back. This is a special episode of Turn the Page. I am Tony Stevens, your star power, being rejoined by my adorable sidekick, Ronnie Shanks, and the sex appeal himself, the professor, Ghostman McClay. Nobody really knows him, I hear, but we are bringing you back for another special episode of Turn the Page, where we actually have a live human being that's crazy enough to come on our show and tell us about themselves and their latest project. And Chris, that's you, sir. Please say hi to the audience.
Hi, everybody. Thank you guys for having me on the show. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, thanks for saying that. He is at least good at lying to us, so that's good.
Well, I said looks. I said looks. I didn't say it was definite.
It's not.
You got to do your job.
We're not promising anybody fun.
But yeah, I'm so glad you're here. I actually wanted to take time to talk to you about your book that got released. I've got a little copy of it right here, the hardback, which if you're out there, you can have it on Kindle. I know that's true, but you can also have your own hardback to add on to your bookshelves, which
and the hardback just looks so much better than something on your phone. It's flat. You can't really hold it in your hand. I get paid more if you buy the book. There's a lot of reasons to get the book. There's a lot of reasons. None of them selfish.
I like having it because, and personally, I've got to applaud you before I started asking you a whole bunch of personal questions about your life. I got to applaud you.
Very stalkerish.
I love this. I love the interior artwork because to me, it's very reminiscent of when I was a kid and I was reading the Conan books. So Conan the Barbarian, Conan the Buccaneer.
That is high praise. Thank you. And that is Mitch Foust who did the cover and the interior art.
And there's another shot of it.
He is a fantastic artist, an amazing fantasy artist, and I'm lucky enough to call him a very good friend.
That's awesome.
Or as Mitch would say, he's a man of few words. Mitch Foust, man of few words.
Well, all right. Well, if you're ready, I want to go ahead and ask you just a few questions, sir. Like I said, they're going to be really super personal. I'm going to ask you about that time you were in jail for doing that one thing.
You're going to have to really expand on that.
Oh, well, honestly, and speaking to the fact, I mentioned the fact that it was a lot like Conan. Reading through it and seeing the interior art to me was a lot like Conan back in the day. But in your opinion, what were some of your inspirations that led you to writing this book?
Well, Robert E. Howard's Conan novels were obviously an inspiration because a lot of fantasy novels nowadays, there's the chosen one, there's the epic quest. It's part one of a cycle or a series. But the Conan novels were this is the story, this is what we're going to tell. Conan needs to fight this creature or save this person. That's the novel. That's the whole story. And I came up with the idea of the story, and I liked it. I liked that it would be a self-contained adventure. And we didn't have a lot of that. I honestly still think we don't have a lot of that, where we have adventure novels, where maybe the same hero or heroine shows up in the next book, but it's not connected other than that person.
It's like
it's just a continuing adventure of their life.
Yes.
I like that. And he definitely had, I like the way that you split it up into the three parts. Because I'm a slow reader, but at the same time, because it seemed to show the development of the character as well. And he was very introspective throughout. So that was very interesting to me. But I know that Ronnie wanted to ask you a few questions too. So I'll let him go ahead before I hog the camera.
Yeah, I got one for you, man. So let's delve into the mind of Jowers for a moment. What is your writing and world building process?
Writing process really starts by having the idea and going, just start writing. You don't have to start writing at the beginning. If your world, your characters are, in a sense, speaking to you, just go ahead and put them on the page, because that's going to help hook your drive, your creativity into finishing the product. And that's what happened with Lostborn. I've had a lot of books I've written, and I mean hundreds of pages that have never seen the light of day because it just didn't hook me. It never really stuck with me. I kept writing, I kept writing, I kept writing. And when it comes to world building, I always tell people be careful, because create the world the character lives in. Don't create the whole world. The story of Thulric Lostborn takes place in a certain land, and there's mentions of the outside world, and then that's it. Because a man on a mission that he's in such desperation and such, fire for him to do the right thing here, none of the other stuff matters. It's just about trying to finish this quest, trying to stop this evil. I'm trying to be as generic as possible because I'm one of those authors that cannot stand spoilers. And I hate it when an author talks about their own book and they ruin something. They ruin a scene or something like that. Just, it kills me. It gets under my nerves. But also when world building, start with your character and go outward. And that really helps cement everything together, I feel. Connects it. Like the spider's web has a center for a very important reason, other than catching and digesting insects. It has a very important reason. Holes.
That's a big part of it, food. That's interesting though. So the character himself is almost reminiscent of how you're doing it. You're a man on a mission. You're writing what's going on, not necessarily getting lost in the sauce of having an entire world that's becoming a character.
Well, if you think about it, that's our everyday lives. When you're driving to work, if you're not listening to the news, you're listening to an audiobook, or you're just listening to music, you have no concept or thought of what's happening 3 blocks from your position, much less what's happening in Indonesia.
Right.
And
it makes it much more personal that way, I think. And,
yes.
People can relate to more personal, smaller stories more than they can to epic world building.
I think you're right on the money, because how am I supposed to feel and connect to a character if I have 75 characters? Joe Abercrombie is one of my absolute favorite fantasy authors. That's one of my favorite authors of all time, because he can do that. He can give you multiple characters with rich backstories and you're hooked into them. But to me, that's a rarity. There's too many authors in all genres that try to do exactly what you're saying. There's way too many characters. How am I going to connect and feel for this person?
That's a good point. Okay. You have another question for him, John?
Well, speaking with the characters, I know that some characters can be more of a joy to write. Do you have a character that you just, when you go to write their lines or their story, does it fill you up more for one character over another?
Well, for the book, it was Thulric for the beginning of my writing process, because I knew where the story was headed. I knew the emotion that was going to happen as I went. But then when I first wrote Marku, the berserker, into the story, and he said his first lines, I just was like, I love this guy. I love this guy. And I actually just had him to be a one-off, be one of those interesting characters, kind of like in a Stephen King novel, where let's be this interesting character who's only in it for one scene and then they never show up again.
Like a Boba Fett.
Yeah, like Boba Fett, exactly. If Marku is up at Boba Fett's level, then I have your praise. I've won. But it worked out where I created another scene where Marku gets to stand out, and it's kind of his scene. And it just felt that if this continued, that I'd have to do more with that character, because I loved writing this berserker who's crazy all the time. Instead of just being crazy in battle, he's absolute insane 24/7. But he's funny. He's the Punisher with a little Robin Williams mixed in there. A little bit Bill Burr. More Bill Burr than Robin Williams, but he's funny.
Bill Burr, the Punisher?
Yeah, that's Marco. You put those two together.
Yeah, that is pretty scary.
Speaking of that, though, because a lot of times if somebody's thinking specifically, I know that with Chris Claremont, especially back when he was doing the Uncanny X-Men, he had specific people kind of in mind when he started writing a character, or the look of the appeal of a character, old actors, stuff like that. How did you really start this process, the journey of writing into this? Did you have somebody specific in mind when you were thinking up with Thulric, or?
Well, weirdly enough, this project came out because Mitch Foust dared me. I had written a previous novella called The Last Ride of Sam Hain. And it too was about a character who was supposed to be over the hill. He was a gunfighter. He was a gunslinger and an outlaw in the Old West, who in his much, much, much later years gets revenge against the mob who have killed his sons. So it's his last ride as a tale of revenge. And he jokingly said, if you write a story about an old Viking, I'll do the cover for free, ha ha ha, or he'll do the cover. And at a convention, I walked up to him and pitched him the idea of Lostborn and walked away as a joke. He hunted me down. And if you know Mitch Foust, he doesn't leave his art table for nothing. And he says, look, jerk, I've been thinking about that story for the last 2 hours. You need to write it. So when it sort of sparked me to have a little bit more inspiration about it. But I thought of course, David Gimmel's Drust the Legend. If you ever want some great action adventure, perfect human dialogue, human nature, fantasy, David Gimmel cannot be missed. And Drust the Legend, or Legend, which was the first book that he was in, he's a warrior who's been over the hill, and he has to stand one more time. And it was an inspiration. Gran Torino,
Oh,
same way.
yes.
I'm a bit of a World War II buff, and there was all these stories of soldiers coming home with that mentality, that grit and iron that war had just sort of compressed and forged inside of them. No matter how old they got, it was still there. And I liked the idea, especially in the Viking world, where if you were 40, you were somebody's great grandfather. Like, people were like, how are you this? How are you alive? And if you were alive, they kind of looked at you weird, like, shouldn't you have died in battle already?
Yeah.
The idea hit me of like, that would be sort of a perfect character. And also in pro wrestling, when you see pro wrestlers, it's very rare to see a pro wrestler in their late 40s to 50s still performing, still working that hard and at that ethic, that aren't injury prone, that aren't in a bad situation in a bad way. And so that sort of grit and determination inspired Thulric to come about. And then I just sort of worked the character on my own.
Okay.
Giving him a backstory, giving him the drive to to hopefully succeed in this quest that he has to take on.
Yes, no spoilers. He might not
Yeah,
succeed.
It may not
I have to punch myself in the face if I did it. I'm that anti-spoiler.
Spoiler alert, last chapter, he pulls something in his back, goes home, takes some painkillers.
I will punch you through the computer, and that's impossible.
All right, so the non-fun part about the writing process, can you explain the publishing aspect and the process of that?
I was very lucky. Tommy Hancock of Pro C Productions is a friend of mine, been a friend for many years, and is a friend of Mitch, so we all knew each other. And when Mitch hunted me down at Mid-South Con and said, wow, sounds like a great story, you have to write it. He told Tommy the idea, then Tommy hunted me down and was like, look, if you finish this and it's good, I'll publish it. Because we have known each other for a while, and spoke about writing, spoke about books, so he knew me. And I turned in the first draft, and he said, I was very lucky because he goes, we've got some grammar mistakes to fill and some questions to ask. He goes, I've never received a manuscript and that I can think of in a long time that was story-wise, nobody wanted to change a thing.
That's good.
And I was shocked, because usually
Awesome.
you need to change this scene, the tone is wrong here. There's a lot of editing things you need to do to kind of hammer out the perfect product. And I just got very lucky, because when I got in the flow of writing, I just kept going. I was doing like 12-hour days of just sitting and writing.
Oh, wow. That's great.
So
Wish
this was,
I'd
I was
write like
teaching,
that.
so I had the summer breaks, and I had breaks where I could take the time, obviously, to do that. I got very lucky that way. Afterward, you got to do the hustle. It's all about the hustle. You have to get out there and sell the book. And that's one thing I've struggled at, because my life as a teacher at that time, and then losing my job, and then having to find a new job, moving to a new city. So life sort of took over for me. And it's just now that I'm getting back into it. I'm getting back in there to, this year was supposed to be the year I was at conventions selling books.
Yeah,
Didn't happen.
I feel you there. We had
Yeah.
so many cards printed up to go to conventions with and hand out cards and start peddling our magic. And as soon as we got our tickets, we got the email, hey, sorry, the world has the COVID. So
That's
I feel for you there. I feel for you there.
But in my example, I got very lucky. People at Pro C Productions
Awesome,
were
man.
great. We did the book release at Mid South Con the next year. So from writing to release, it only took a single year,
Oh, that's great.
and we sold out at the convention.
How long do you think it'll take before the audiobook comes out?
Well, that's going to be the harder part because I want to do the audiobook myself, and that's difficult. I have to find an editor. So you have to find an audio editor, somebody that can listen to it and say your performance is great here, it doesn't match this. It's a little bit more difficult. And also
It's a lot of
making sure that
material.
it's a ton. And having the studio built where I can make professional quality. That's the other. Actually, if you see the walls behind me, hopefully by the next time we speak again, you will see sound baffling all over. So I'll be turning this room into my sound. I do voicemails as the characters to certain people that I know. And as soon as I do it, they go, when's the audiobook coming out? They immediately press me about it.
I mean, there's a lot of slow readers out there, and maybe some people who can't read at all. Maybe some 4-year-olds who really want to get into Lostborn and they can't read
their
yet.
parents are letting them listen to it. They got bad parents.
If they're Viking parents, they will let them listen to it.
It's a rough book. But honestly, audiobooks to any aspiring authors that are out there, audiobooks is really where the market is moving toward, because people do want to listen more now. They want audiobooks to take now. Podcasts are going to dominate more than watching the news.
I hope so.
Definitely, and it's a good and it's also a really good revenue source if you could find a way to do it yourself or do it with people and your own connections, because they'll pay $14 or $15 for the audiobook. Let's being a little selfish here. So your revenue coming back is more.
Wow. Before I ask you the next question, can you give us a small taste of what Thalric would sound like?
Oh man, I haven't practiced Thor. I can give you Marku pretty easily. Marku.
Okay, so let's hear that.
I don't know why you're wearing that shirt. You've killed no one. You've not earned red. Now I, on the other hand, my armor is almost. Sorry, I forgot how weak-willed and weak your bladder is. Just for me talking to you, you may wet yourself like the small child that you obviously are.
That's great, man.
That's
Well,
Awesome.
how long did it actually take you? You said that the whole process took you about a year, just from start to finish. But how long did it actually take you? Because I know a lot of people, when it comes to sitting down and just getting the words on the computer or paper or however you're writing, it can be a real hitting a brick wall kind of process. How long did it really take you just to sit there and get the manuscript done?
I would say about 7 to 8 months for getting the manuscript itself. Because by the time, I'd say about a week after Mid-South Con, I was writing.
Okay.
And I remembered something that Stephen King had said, where he goes, there is no such thing as writer's block. Right.
It's a job.
If you write like it's a job, but also if you write 13 pages and 2 sentences are good, at least you got those 2 sentences on paper. And he said with typing, it was a different story because of paper and ink and the cost of and all that. But with digital, he goes, just right. And so that's what I did. And there's how many, 30 or 40 pages of Lostborn got cut out. Like there's a whole section of more of other things, I'll just say that I had to cut out because I realized it wasn't the speed I wanted. I wanted this adventure to have a certain pace because it's frantic. What he's doing is on a timetable. He has to get it done, timeline rather. He's got to get this quest finished or horrible things are going to happen. So extra stuff just was getting in the way. And I thought they were good pages. I thought, they were some really good writing. But the tempo it just ruined the tempo of the book. So I cut that out. So it was a 7 to 8 months. But again, I was teaching at the time, winter breaks, summer breaks, fall break. I had a lot of, paid time off where I could sit and write for 8 hours a day without any sacrifice. So, I credit people who have full-time jobs in their writing, because it's much harder.
All right, so what comes after Lostborn?
What do you mean? What are you implying?
What's next?
Osborne 2.
Well, and what's next in the adventure of Mr. Jowers?
Well,
Yeah.
from after Lostborn, I took a kind of a hiatus from writing because life went sideways. I ended up losing my job as a teacher simply because of budgetary concerns. But that was a real hit. I really enjoyed teaching, and I loved my students. I really just enjoyed working with those kids. And then, I wasn't going to be their teacher anymore. So that was tough. And as a teacher, you get that. Anytime when they graduate or when you have to move on to another position. So I moved to Nashville, and then life just took over from there. I tried writing a couple of things, didn't work. And then recently, I've started working on a new fantasy idea that has really sank its teeth into me. And I don't have any of this. Started already writing it. I've started doing a sort of a world Bible, if you will, centered around the character. But one thing I hate in fantasy is the chosen one. If he's the chosen one or she's the chosen one, then they're going to win. Like, where's the effort? Where's the drive?
Right.
So, but what about the opposite? What if you were fated to have a good life, but someone stole your fate? So that means all of the potential evil and bad and darkness that you would avoid is in your life all the time. Under that grind, how long would it take for you to become the villain? Could you remain a good person? And so that idea kind of hooked me, and I came up with a very different approach to it. And so I've been working on that, and hopefully, knock on wood, nothing else gets in the way. Don't lose the fire, don't lose the drive. And hopefully I'll have the first draft done by the end of this year. That's my goal.
I kind of like the sound of that.
Awesome.
That's a
Looking forward to that.
it's like the opposite of a lot of stories you see where you start off with a character that maybe isn't the best kind of person. Then through the story, he becomes the chosen one and a good person. So you're starting off with someone who starts off like really good, and the challenge they must overcome is not being ground down to become the villain eventually.
Because think about it. Like in your life, when things go wrong, they hurt you worse if it's if you failed, part of you could understand why you didn't get the job. I didn't work hard enough. But if you work really hard and don't get the promotion, well, why? Oh, just because? That sometimes creates more a negative effect on your character, on who you are.
Something's out of your power.
Actually, I've got to relaunch it. I forgot that my trial expired. I've launched a podcast called The Confession of Johnny 8. And I've got 3 episodes. They're going to go up again this week. They'll be on Stitcher. I'm trying to get them on Spotify and the other locations as well. But Stitcher's my home. That's where I started on podcasts myself. I love listening to a lot of different kind of horror podcasts, especially Chilling Tales for Dark Nights. We'll shout out to them. But it's the story of a serial killer who is confessing to murdering well over 40 people in 3 years. But his confession is he turns into a giant tarantula and eats them.
So like I guess are you to believe him, or is this real, or
is it real? Is this guy crazy? Is he actually killing evil people? Because that's sort of the hook, is that he eats these people, but they're all bad.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of Frailty. As a movie that came out.
Little inspired by Frailty, by the way.
Yeah, that was such a good
horror film. Yes.
Oh, it's such a good, like the concept, like where they don't divulge, like, the perspective and which one's actual reality.
They let you do it. I loved it.
Yeah, I love it.
Well,
check that movie out.
The reader do the work of, or the listener do the work of the terror for the person. That's pretty good.
And basically it's him confessing. There's no special effects. It's not an audio drama. It's just him telling you about the people that he's killed, his life, sharing his life as a spider, as a human spider in the world, and also the various other supernatural entities that he's run across.
That sounds interesting. I kind of want to check that out.
And I'll have it up in a couple of days
Yeah.
again. I've got the first 3
Yeah,
episodes.
if you can shoot us over a link for that too, we'll put it on the video when it's all done, so that we can
I hope to get him back up tomorrow or Tuesday,
Cool
because
deal.
I've got to upgrade my account and all that to make sure they're up. I was using the free account thing, and I forgot that it went out because I was getting ready to show you guys and pitch it to you as well.
Awesome. Well, I have just one more question. We're running out of time just because of the constraints of, well, how long people watch certain segments. But you know, we could talk to you for hours. I feel like you got a great personality. But John and Ronnie and I have one thing in common, and that's we love to doodle. We love to draw. Artistry is a big passion of ours.
Mhm.
And you mentioned having Mitch Foust actually. Can you tell me a little bit about maybe how you were lucky enough to hook up with him, to get him to be the person that did this project with you?
Well, really, it was just friendship. I've been friends with Mitch for, I can't even tell you, probably more than 10 years, maybe a little bit less, but it's been a long time. I became friends with someone he knew named Jim Hall, another outstanding artist, an amazing artist. Jim and I were working on a project together, so I would sit with him at conventions, and that would let me sit with Dean Zachary, another great artist, and Mitch.
Oh
And
yeah, I
Mitch,
have a picture here actually from Dean Zachary. He's great.
Dean and I used to hang out all the time. I miss Dean. But Jim brought me along because I was writing a project that he was going to do with me. And Mitch saw that I was business, though, at a convention. I was about selling, artwork for the guys when they weren't there. I kept the line moving across the table. So Mitch was like, oh, this guy knows why we're here. We're not just sitting here to talk comics and goof off. And we found out we had a ton in common. And then we just started hanging out at conventions and talking to each other and became friends and became pretty good friends. So I was very lucky, very, very lucky that I got him to do the cover. And he did the interior art. And he was a great sounding board too, because if I wasn't writing, he wanted to know why.
Awesome.
So it was that's what you need to have. You need those people in your life to go, oh yeah, man, that stinks that you got sick this weekend. So you need to start writing next week, or start writing, when you start feeling it. Like you need that motivation and that push.
Mm-hmm.
And he was that. He's a great guy.
Yeah, I call that my wife, actually. She's the one that does all that to me. But it's on a daily basis. Hey, did you remember to do that thing I told you to do? Did you remember to do that thing you wanted to do? But it's good to have that type of person in your life. And I'm really happy that he was the one that helped you with this, because he did a great job just on the cover and on the interior artwork and everything. We've really appreciated you coming out and taking your time to talk with us about this whole deal. And hopefully we've reached out to some people for you and maybe giving you some potential new readers, or if we've reached out and touched a potential next writer, so that we can see what they're going to come out with too. But again, everybody, don't forget to like, subscribe. We'll go ahead and put in some links so that you can check out Mr. Jowers' stuff, and maybe even go ahead and put a link in for Mitch Foust, his webpage, and some stuff for him as well, because this is all about supporting the community, and that's what we aim to do. So thank you again, sir, for coming out. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully we can have you back again when you're launching that audiobook and anything else great that you have planned to do. But until then, this is still Tony Stevens, and still telling you to keep it real, stay good to each other, and always support your friends. And until next time, don't forget to show this show to your grandma.